Hi there, my name is John Holden. I graduated from the University of Connecticut in 1992 with a bachelor's degree in ornamental horticulture. In 1993, I started Land Designs Unlimited. I design, install, and maintain landscapes for homeowners in Upper Fairfield County, Connecticut. Today, I'd like to share my passion with you. How you doing today, folks? Today I'd like to make a video for you guys about how to selectively prune blue hollies. And if you look over my left shoulder, you'll see one right over here. Now, blue hollies are anything like Ilex X meserveae, Blue Princess. There's one called Blue Angel. There's a whole bunch of blue hollies out there that usually grow in a pyramidal habit, and then they'll have red berries in the fall. And the first thing you should know about pruning your hollies is hollies get their flowers and then consequently their fruit on the growth from the previous year. So right now it's June, and by pruning in June, I'm going to end up pruning off any of the flowers or the fruit that may be on this holly. Now, the holly behind me actually didn't have any flowers. There's no fruit coming, so we're okay. I kind of wonder if maybe there's not a... Hollies are also plants that there's a male and a female. So the ones with the berries are obviously the females, and you need a male pollinator around. And I kind of wonder if maybe there's not a male pollinator for these hollies over here. In an ideal world, what you want to do is go ahead and selectively prune your hollies the heaviest during the winter, during the dormant season. And then through the season, you can just do a little nip here and there just to keep them, where you want them to be. But you really want to do your heavy pruning over the winter. And I just want to take the camera off the stand here and show you guys the way hollies grow and why I'm really not a big fan of pruning blue hollies with hedge clippers. Now, this one has been clipped for years. And if you take a look, you can see now on the tips here, there's some dieback. And quite often I'll see with shrubs that have been sheared, all your growth on this shrub is on the outside. So if you reach into this holly, there really is, no growth in there that's going to take over, like, where this part died back. Now, I don't know if this was winter burn, maybe the deer munched it. I'm not really sure why this part died, but we want to get this holly to have a more open habit and have that foliage going all the way into the shrub. Now, here's one over here that I did yesterday. I saved more. So this is what we want the end result to look like. Now, this one looks really nice because the pear tree behind actually lost a branch and it fell on this holly. So the homeowner ended up clipping off a lot of the growth on this holly. But now here's one that I did yesterday, and this one came out a lot more sparse, and in another month or two you're going to see new growth coming on it. But this is the most extreme example of one I did yesterday where I kept trying to prune it, and I couldn't find a way to prune it without just really thinning it out. So all these branches I left here, they will develop new growth, and I promise you in a month or two, you'll barely be able to tell that this shrub was pruned. If this is the first video of mine you're watching about selective pruning, I recommend you watch the video I'm going to put right up here, which is an introduction to selective pruning. Usually when I selectively prune, when I'm trying to teach selective pruning, I'll do it in 3 steps. First, I'll reach deep into the shrub and try to open things up a bit, cutting any dense foliage way back. Then I'm going to reach a little bit less into the shrub and stagger my cuts. All my cuts aren't going to be on the same level. They're going to be staggered in and out a little bit and kind of thin things out some more. And then finally I'll go back and try to round out the shrub. Now, this holly here, I'm pretty sure is going to end up looking like a bunch of sticks when I'm done. It's very congested, but I really would recommend you take a look at that video. I just went to move the camera, and when I put the camera back in the tripod, I didn't have it locked in the tripod, so when I picked up the tripod to move, the whole camera dropped down. And my very expensive camera, I almost had a heart attack because it would really not be a good thing if I broke this camera. So let's all just be very glad that something bad didn't happen. So the first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and reach in and clean the shrub out a bit. So we'll move the camera here so you can see. So I'm just going to take my pruners out here, and wherever the growth is the most dense, I'm just going to reach in there and see if I can clean it out a bit. Now, I had a viewer comment about trying to do this with hollies, and he said, you know, the hollies have a lot of like really stringy growth, and they do. When you get in the middle of a holly, what happens is growth from the other side of the shrub will work its way to this side. Like there'll be these little skinny branches all over the place. So when you're starting to prune, I've got one here. When you're starting to prune, take a look for any branches that come from like the other side of the shrub and cross over, and get those out. Because we really want to try to avoid branches that cut across the center of the shrub. We want all the growth to start at the middle and work outwards. And if you've got an extreme case, you don't have to do all that growth at once. You know, you can very patiently work away at it, a little at a time. And I also just want to say that, you know, the examples I showed you, you know, I've been doing this for years, so I'm very comfortable selectively pruning, and I know that those shrubs are going to come back. If it's your first time doing this, you don't have to go as extreme as I did. You know, just do a few cuts and then come back in a month or two, and you're going to see the new growth coming. And that way, you'll really understand how the process works. But let's see if we can, I mean, this growth is just so tight, there's nowhere to really prune. But I mean, here's a branch from the holly, and you can see how deep into the shrub there's no growth, and then at the tip here, this is all you've got. Now, hollies are kind of cool in the fact that if, you know, there's a couple places you want to prune this. The first place you could prune is just outside where a branch starts. So when I cut this, I was actually cutting just above another branch. Now, if I was going to cut this branch not as far back, I would end up cutting it right here, just a little bit outside that bud. Now, the other thing about holly, though, is all these dots here, this is where there used to be leaves. So if you were to come in and cut just outside one of these dots on the stem, you're going to get some new growth and some new buds from the tip, and some of the ones farther back may start growing too. Now, I'm not a huge fan of leaving a bunch of spikes like this in the landscape, because if a child is running through this landscape or an animal, dark at night, you know, somebody could lose an eye very easily. If I'm deep in the shrub and there's another branch cut above it that's going to kind of block this point, I will leave points like this. So right here, there's just a mess of tight growth. So I'm going to come in behind that tight growth, and I'm just going to clip it out. Yes, there is a hole, but by creating this hole, we're going to leave room for other branches to come in. And if you just kept hitting this with the hedge clippers every year at the tips, all you're going to get is just this little bit of growth, and you're going to get more growth, and it's too weak for the shrub to survive. And it actually looks like somebody maybe took some dull hedge clippers. This just doesn't look like a happy camper. We're going to thin things out quite significantly, because this is just way too much. All that growth is at the tips. And you've got a cut here that just never really healed over right. Maybe it was cut a little bit too far. You know, you want to cut just above the branches, but not like an inch. If I was cutting here, cut like that. If you make cuts like this, your shrub is going to heal over much better than if you leave a long stub on it. Now, you could also prune, if you saw a branch like this with this little bit of growth here, you could come in come in and do that, and then this branch will grow. So this one's kind of spreading across the shrub, so we're going to get that out of there. This branch here is going back into the middle of the shrub. Get that out of there. Here's a dead one in the middle. Always, whenever you see a dead branch, just go ahead and clip that out. There's a bunch of branches that are coming off in a V. We'll choose the healthiest one. Okay, here's another one growing back towards the center of the shrub. So I'm just going to work my way around a bit here, starting way deep in the shrub and trying to thin out the really dense growth on this guy. Let me show you something else, if I can do this without breaking the camera again. So right over here, whoever pruned this last, pruned way up here. They left a stub that's about 3 inches long. So this holly, if it couldn't close that stub, so it never really healed over. So now you've got a place where insects and disease can get into the plant. This should have been cut down lower about there, and that way it would have healed over much quicker. Probably can't see with the camera, but there's some new growth in the middle, so I'll see if I can open the shrub up a bit so this growth in the middle can start and make the growth a little deeper. Thin that out, just kind of spindly. Look at it, just spindly. I mean, what is this branch doing? You've got all this growth and all you've got is a few leaves on the end. What you want to do is cut these guys back so you've got the growth on the inside. All you've got is the growth on the tip. It's just not how this shrub wants to grow. This whole tip of the branch is kind of dead here, so we'll cut that out. And you can use loppers. Holly is not a shrub that cuts easy. So here's another one. I mean, this was in the middle of the shrub. And this one, when somebody pruned this, they pruned it too tight. So you can see the shrub was trying to heal over, but it didn't quite make it. One of my pet peeves when pruning holly and upright shrubs is I don't like it when they end up running along the ground. This is a good place where leaves get caught. Eventually the branches will start to root out, and then when you're pruning and mulching, you can't get the mulch under the drip line of the plant. So I'll usually make sure when I'm pruning my hollies that I go through and take off any branches running along the ground. And it looks like this holly was actually planted too deeply. If you take a look, it's either planted too deeply or mulched too deeply. If you take a look over here, you can see how it was planted too deep. You can see how the branches start like underneath the mulch. So this shrub should easily have been planted, I would say, at least 4 inches higher, and these gardens definitely have a fairly generous amount of mulch. But what we're going to do is just cut back some of these ones along the ground. You don't have to go crazy. I mean, you don't want it to look like they were lifted way off the ground. It should look natural. I just don't like it when the branches rubble, they run along the ground, then they start rooting, and then you just can't really work around the plant. The deeper I get into this shrub, it's just the more congested and growth growing in all different directions. So what I'm going to end up doing with this shrub is I'm going to just take it down to basically sticks, and we're going to let it regrow. And if it's your first time, again, you don't need to go this far. You know, you can do it a little bit at a time. But I promise you, when we come back in a month or two, our end results are going to be worth the effort and worth the month or two that this shrub is going to look kind of silly. Now, if you work in the trade, I highly recommend, if you're going to do pruning like this, that you let your clients know beforehand, because there can be a bit of a shock factor when people come home from work and they see their shrubs cut way back. And I'll never forget one of the first jobs I did over, 20 years ago. I came in and I did some pruning for a lady, and her foundation planting was very overgrown. So I came in and I had my college degree and I knew what I was doing, and I just went through and I just really cleaned house on her plants. Well, once I finished the pruning and I saw the look on her face, and I asked, if there was any problem, she explained to me that they were going to be having I think it was a baptism for their newborn baby in another couple weeks. And she just wanted me to come out and make things look nice for the baptism. So, I never really heard from them again. I got paid, but just, it's very common now when I talk to customers to always ask them if they have a deadline for completing a project, if there's a big party coming or something, because it does make a difference in how we do things. I'm trying to prune back to either a crotch. So this would have been just above a crotch, but if I wasn't going to prune this back to the crotch, I'd prune it just above. You see this little new growth? I'd prune it just above that new growth. And then I could prune it out here. And then you see how that's dead? That's why I pruned it, because I don't know if that's some disease or dead or just dull pruners and pruned incorrectly. And one other thing I'd recommend when you're pruning holly like this, or just pruning in general, is you can really get so focused on what you're pruning that you forget where you are and what you're doing. And it would be very easy to end up bending over to prune and to catch your eye on one of these little tips. So I always wear glasses when I'm pruning, and I would be wearing them today just for the sun, but you don't want to, boy, I can't tell you how many times I've been walking through a shrub or pruning a tree, and you're so focused on where you're going that you don't look where you are. You end up with a tree in your face, and if that tree catches your eyes, bad things can happen. So I've taken this corner of the shrub to a little bit smaller foliage. It's got some growth coming on the inside, and hopefully after we remove the mulch around the base so it's not feeling so suffocated and open it up a bit, we'll get some real nice growth here. So this is our end result, and I know it's a bit of a shock, and I want to say again, this isn't how I would prune a blue holly every time. I guess I'm going to title this video something like Extreme Pruning of Blue Hollies. But this holly was so overgrown and just so messy. It had poor pruning cuts, it had foliage that was too dense, the mulch was too deep around it. But I promise you, we come back in a month or two, you're going to see just a whole bunch of new growth. All the areas that I left on, this shrub wants to grow. It's got the growth coming, but it was so dense that it just can't get the light. It can't work out. And if it does start growing, it's going to get choked out by all that growth on the outside. So we'll come back in a month, and I promise we'll show you how nice this shrub looks. I'll have to make another video about like more of a maintenance pruning. This would be what I would consider renewal pruning of a holly. So again, with renewal pruning, you usually want to do that early in the season when the plant is going to grow the most. So this is something you should do when the plant is dormant until early to midsummer. After that, I'd wait till the next year, because the plant's not going to have enough time to regrow and regenerate. Well, thanks a lot for watching today, folks. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them below. Keep an eye. I'm going to leave a link. It won't be up for another month or two, but I'll put a link up here that's going to show you how this shrub looks in a month or two. So right where my hand is, look for just like a white box and click on that to see the follow-up on that shrub. If you enjoyed watching this video, which is probably going to be titled Renewal Pruning Blue Holly, I also did a video about renewal pruning spirea this spring, and right next to me, this is either gold mound or magic carpet spirea. I'm thinking it might be magic carpet because it's not quite as deep gold color, but this stuff is definitely ready to be renewal pruned. Now, because it's June, I wouldn't do it now, so I'm going to recommend to my clients we come back in the spring and just cut this down to about a foot from the ground. But if you've got spirea that's 3.5, 4 feet tall and it's just taking your garden over, click on a link I'm going to put up here and I'll show you how to go ahead and renewal prune it. And in the video I made, the spirea is coming back beautifully. So hey, thanks a lot for watching today, folks, and we'll see you around. Have a great day.